Hello, you're listening to episode 3 of Fintech Mix. I'm Nat Barker. This is the specialist podcast for fintech professionals where we learn from talented people working in the industry. One such talented person is my guest today. He is Stuart Lowe, Creative Director of Dext. Stuart, thank you very much for joining me. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you, Nat, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Well, thank you very much for accepting the invitation. And whereabouts are you speaking from today?
I'm in Rustington, a little village down in West Sussex, just by the seaside.
Oh, lovely. Very nice. So, Stuart, can you just start by telling us a little bit about Dext? What does the company do? And that, for listeners, that's Dext, a four-letter word, D-E-X-T, in case you're wondering. What does the company do, Stuart?
Basically, we're an accounting software for accountants and bookkeepers. Predominantly, we aim to make our accountants more profitable and productive through the services that we offer. There's a kind of a link to the products that we have that also look after small businesses, but our bread and butter is really the accountant and bookkeeper.
One thing that struck me about this when I was kind of doing a bit of reading up on it is the accounting industry. I think there's a perception that it's a little bit dinosaur-like, and it's obviously kind of dominated. It's well known that it's sort of dominated by four very large firms. How receptive do you think, the accounting industry is to a sort of shaker-upper like Dext moving into the space?
Well, they're absolutely all over it. I mean, we've not actually been Dext for that long. We rebranded in February of this year. Prior to that, we were Receipt Bank, and the company has been in circulation over 11 years. So it was a big change moving from Receipt Bank that was well known within the market, a growing base for our customers. But, we've got a loyal bank of customers, and Dext is just a new modern approach in terms of how we're positioning the business.
Okay, sure. And you're the design guy, is that right? So can you tell me about what your role involves?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm creative director at Dext. I have an internal team. We essentially operate like an agency, but in-house. So we cover creative from every corner of the spectrum, as you can imagine. So video right through to web development. And we work within the marketing department. So we help market Dext as a product.
And can you tell me a little bit about your career, sort of briefly? Could you plot that for us? How did you come to be at Dext?
Yeah, it's I've been there for just over 3 years now. And prior to that, I worked for a email security business. I've worked both agency side and in-house, but predominantly through my career has been in-house. And it's typically been the kind of thing that I've done here at Dext. I join a startup that, where the co-founder, the CEO, or even will make adaptations to the website. And that happens on a daily basis. There's no kind of brand guidelines or any set stringent way of working from a creative point of view. And I come in and help build those teams to, cover the requirements there. And that's pretty much what I've done at Dext. So built out a creative team, and we've been there for 3 years, and we basically manage everything that's regarding marketing Dext as a product.
Okay, I think one thing that's interesting about Dext and maybe sets it apart from a lot of the other fintechs that we're talking about on the podcast is that you're not trying to pitch to the person on the street, as it were. It's very much business to business. And I wondered if that poses any challenges for you creatively.
I don't think it does. I think, look, when I first joined Dext, we have these newbie presentations. Now, when I joined, there were only about 200 people there, and we're currently running at over 500 globally. But one of the questions was asked, I'd come from an email security business, obviously like being creative and talking to businesses. Prior to that, I was working for like the car industry. One of the questions that came up was like, how do you be a designer on cars one day and a designer for petrol stations the next and email security the next and so forth? And I think the answer I gave then is probably the best answer I can give now, which is as long as you know the product, as long as you understand the audience and how best to communicate that product to them on a level that they understand, there aren't really any creative constraints for us to tackle. Myself and my team, and the way I build my teams, is purely focused on being commercial creatives. So of course we're very proud of what we do. We're sensitive because we're creative, but we put a lot of passion into the work that we produce. But by commercial creatives, I mean we're doing the best that we can to position the business in the best way that our audiences, our target audiences, understand it and take that on. So we're not precious about, winning awards or having an amazing book to walk away with, but we're extremely precious about doing the right thing, helping our customer base grow, and actually putting the product in front of the right people and actually making sure that it is the right product for them.
Okay, sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, I think. I mean, Just how important is it to get the branding and design and all of the rest of that stuff right for fintechs like Dext, do you think?
I think, I'll use one of the other kind of phrases that I said when I joined. They had 5,000 customers, so they must have been doing something right. But when you looked at how the business was presented, if you printed everything out or if you stuck everything up on a screen, there was, no real obvious link in how they were creatively promoting themselves, apart from orange. But even that was wrong. There were 50 shades of orange. So orange was the brand color, but it was just never really done right. So, putting into practice the brand guidelines to best position the business so that wherever you saw Dext, there was an obvious link to the photography that's being used. The color palette was recognizable, the iconography that we've introduced and so forth. And then this wonderful little device, the lasso that we call it, or the thread, which is a supporting device. And we create various different shapes out of it, like a heart for satisfactory and so forth. So those kind of things, are really important, I think, from a communication point of view as a brand and putting us into that brand space.
Something very interesting about that. I think for a lot of people working for an accounting firm might not realize that getting a consistent shade of orange would be so significant. But I guess that's that's the reason why they hire people like you, isn't it? I guess because you understand that and understand that matters to people, and that's a way that you can establish yourself more as a brand.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the consistency. The consistency develops trust. People, it's not like we were known as being orange, especially in the old world, when you could actually go to a physical event. You walked into the arena and saw a big orange tower that was our business, So getting that right and the consistency and the use of that orange everywhere is really important to develop that trust in our users.
So do you think consistency is sort of key to a good brand? Do you think there's anything else that is really important to have there?
Consistency is key from a trust point of view. Like I mentioned, if you've got like some digital advertising going on in there and they come through to your website and there's a slight difference in how you're presenting yourselves, there's an immediate block in the user thinking, am I in the right place? So I think consistency from that point of view absolutely has to be, not necessarily top of the tree, but it's certainly up there in the high leaps. Yeah.
Okay. Can you tell me a little bit about the name Dext then? Where does that come from? What does it mean, as it were? You mentioned, I think, that you were sort of involved in the rebrand from Receipt Bank to Dext. So it's quite a big shift. You've kind of torn up the name and started again. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think, look, receipt and bank, probably two of the most boring words in the English dictionary. They're also a mouthful when you're trying to promote the business, if you like. We had or overheard many conversations from our sales teams when, hi, it's Jack from Receipt Bank. No, Receipt Bank. No, we're not a bank. So all our conversations started off on a very awkward footing because of the name, and it just seems like a bit crazy. So we wanted something that was fresh, something that was easy to pronounce, easy to understand. And actually it's made up of two words. It's made up of the words dexterity and next. So there are two key things that we're working on within our business. With the dexterity side of our business is strong, and obviously we're about the next generation of accounting. So it was kind of like, it felt really nice to pull those together. Obviously we have a brand director at Dext as well, so working very closely with him and an appointed set of designers. That's what we came up with, and we're very proud of it. Yes.
Okay, all right, great. Well, when you started out in your career, did you picture yourself working at a firm like Dext, and how did that sort of come to be about? Realize that this was a kind of space in which you thrived, or?
No, do you know what? When my mom asked me what I do, the easiest way to explain to my mom is I colour things in, and right from a young age, as a young child, I did that. I coloured things in, and I really enjoyed drawing and being creative, and right from a very young age entering the competitions that were on the TV that you won't even remember at your age, because I'm a lot older obviously. But I loved that kind of like creative side, not particularly academic, but I can colour things in. And I never really had a passion to work for a big brand as a designer, or be something different as an artist, if you like. But I did have and always have had a passion to help. And I think, through being creative, you can help. If you can help promote something so that it's easily understood, then there's an immense amount of satisfaction from that. And I've had that in my career and in every space that I've worked in. I've always gone in with how can I help explain what it is that we do and how best to promote that so that we can get the best outcome. Again, going back to that commercial creative link, it's about thinking about both sides. So we think about the user, of course, and we think about the customer, absolutely. But ultimately, it's about the gain that we can get for the business, and it's finding the right balance in doing that.
And I see from my notes, Stuart, that you've climbed Kilimanjaro, done more than half a dozen marathons, done the 3-peak challenge, cycled coast to coast. Seems like you're also a very active person. Has that always been the case?
Yeah, always. My mum's still got trophies in the memory box when I was a kid, the running races and so forth. And, like this is, I'm in my 49th year and I still hold the 800-meter record at the school I attended in Loughborough, Leicestershire. So yeah, I've always been active. However, things change dramatically. You mentioned Kilimanjaro and snowboarding and so forth. My obviously lockdowns changed things an awful lot, but prior to lockdown, my extreme sporting activity was soft play with our 2 children on a Saturday afternoon. So it's gone from mountain biking or climbing mountains to jumping in ball pits and going down bumpy slides. So
right.
Not quite the same, but still very good fun with the children.
And what's
yeah.
harder? What's harder, climbing Kilimanjaro or homeschooling a couple of young children?
I can categorically say that homeschooling children is a hell of a lot harder. Absolutely, yes. Homeschooling children, juggling work, and living in the world that we're living in at the moment on lockdown. So yeah, it was a tough challenge, but
yes,
we got there.
That's what I wanted to ask you actually. How do you generally find balancing work and family life, and has that changed at all during the pandemic?
It's a really good question, and I think if I can be honest, prior to the pandemic, commuting into London 4 times a week, up at 5 a.m, home at 8:30 in the evening for 4 days of the week, I didn't see the children, never had tea with them, never had breakfast with them, spent an awful lot of time over the weekends, and hence losing my extreme sports passion and having the time with the kids. But the pandemic's done a lot of good, really, for us. I mean, I'll say that selfishly because, I mentioned earlier that I live by the beach. I've managed to have breakfast, have tea, spend more time with the children. My youngest boy, Sonny, he's 1.5 years. I've seen him grow up from a baby. Amelia, our daughter, who's 6, I only saw her at the weekends, really, because when I left to travel to London, it was 5 a.m. When I came home from my travels to London, it was 8:30 in the evening.
Yeah, that's a long day.
It's an awfully long day, and missing time with the kids was a real pain and a heartache for me. But I'm glad to say it's somewhat changed, and actually the business has changed through the pandemic in the sense that productivity has gone through the roof because I think people are less stressed. We're not traveling, we haven't got that long commute. And these days, even if you live in London, you have an hour's commute. Well, that's still a good chunk out of your morning and evening, and in particular when you have family. So, that's great. Our business has realised that actually people can work from home and are productive and are trusted. So I think that's really good. In regards to how do you separate it out? It's difficult, right? You get out of bed, you walk across the landing, you walk downstairs, and you're in your office. And it's very, very difficult to resist the temptation of, just checking that email. I know we all have smart devices, but, with a big monitor and your laptop and your setup that you have, it's very, very tempting to just go in and finish something off or just check your emails or check those Slack messages. It's a great reminder, having children, that is a good thing to help me, kind of find that split between home and work, if you like, or play and work.
Yeah, sure. I mean, moving forward, just for context for listeners, so me and Stuart are speaking in the second week of April, so it's most people, I think, are still working from home, those who have office jobs, and I guess the process of some people going back to the office is kind of starting gradually. I wonder, where you view yourself sitting within that. Are you expecting to go back to the office 5 days a week like you were before, or are you going to have a different sort of pattern?
Yeah, there's definitely going to be a different pattern. I mean, no doubt there's, as a creative and a guy who runs a creative team, collaboration's key. Sitting amongst 7 colleagues all with the same passion around creative and the goals for the business, you miss that. You miss not being next to those people. You miss, not being able to bounce ideas off of each other. We'll absolutely be going back to the office, but we won't be going back to that 5-day or 4-day a week thing. It will be more like 1 or 2 days a week. And I think what we'll do is obviously focus those days and that time on collaboration sessions, on really thinking about, how we can work together creatively. And the rest of the week will be the doing time. Zoom's an amazing thing, all the different ways in which we can connect in this world, StreamYard and Google and everything else. But it's not the same to, when you compare it to standing in a room with a whiteboard, sitting on beanbags, throwing ideas at each other, it's just not the same. The facilities are there within the software, but it isn't the same as being close to your colleagues and actually having that contact. So we will be going back to the office, but it definitely won't be, to the extent of 5 days a week.
And do you feel maybe that for your team as the kind of creatives in the business, that kind of real face-to-face contact, that ability to kind of, bounce things off each other in a room is particularly important?
I do. I mean, I'm extremely proud of what we've achieved, and especially my team. We've been in lockdown, if you like, or we've been in this pandemic and working from home for a little over a year. And, not only have we managed to maintain the creative output of the team, we've actually rebranded as well. And we've done that all remotely. Some of my guys, live on their own in a 1-bedroom flat in London and, haven't seen anybody other than the people that they see on Zoom. Others are like me, married with children and have the luxury of having a house, so they can disassociate, where they work by working in the lounge or working in a separate room. But it's still not the same as having that human contact. We were fortunate enough throughout the pandemic to have 2 days where restrictions were lifted, and we went and did a social distance working in a hired studio. And it was just great to kind of see your colleague face to face, albeit 2 meters apart. But it wasn't through the internet in the way that we've been kind of used to for such a long time. So it's definitely important. But I think we've also shown how adaptable we can be. And certainly, in the same way that businesses trust their staff and they've adapted, I think staff have been even more so adaptable. And I'm impressed by that adaptability, because it's not been easy and there are lots of confusions and lots of constraints, but actually we've done a really good job. And I think that's just testament to the people that my guys are, really.
Stuart, what I really like is that as you're saying this, we have got a sing along happening in the background, which I think kind of just really adds a lot of meaning to some of what you're saying.
See, that would be my 6-year-old daughter walking by the lounge. Yes. It's funny though, as a business, and I think this is important, as a business, we actually encourage, if you're working from home and you have a family, we encourage you to invite your children in if you're on a Zoom call to say hello. Our CEO does it. In fact, all of our C-suite do it, because it's a reality of where we are. What we don't want to kind of live through is this embarrassment of your 4-year-old, 5-year-old, whatever, walking into the room and waving at the screen. It's a novelty to these guys. They're excited by seeing mommy and daddy work at home. And as a business, Dext, we're encouraged to embrace that and actually, bring the kids in. So it's nice. But that was Amelia, my 5-year-old daughter, singing as she went by.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really interesting point, actually. It's a really good one. It's just working from home isn't where you make your home into an office. It's a different way of working, and you shouldn't be embarrassed about having a family in your home. But I think at the start for when working from home became the norm for everyone, there was a kind of a period where it took a little bit of working some of that stuff out.
Yeah, definitely. I think there was a lot of, again, we've used the words, being adaptable, but we definitely had to, didn't we, at the beginning? And everybody thought that it was really bad if your kid walked in. And, it was only a few weeks into the lockdown, if you like, where our business said, look, you all have different circumstances. You're all working under different constraints. And if one of those is that you've got children or dogs or cats, it doesn't matter. Just, you're in the environment that you're in and that's your home. So we'll help you make that as fun as possible, really.
What advice do you have for somebody, starting out in the kind of fintech world, or somebody who's perhaps, got a similar skill set to you, who is wondering whether their abilities might be usefully applied to the fintech industry?
It's interesting. Yeah, I think look, I've, not to blow any trumpets, but I've worked hard since a very young age. I've always been, like I said earlier, always been into helping in such a way, using the skills that I have from a creative point of view, helping businesses, helping others. I mean, look, without sounding like the dad that I am, working hard, being honest, being respectful, being passionate about what you do and actually believing what you do, they're the things that have got me through. Like, again, not blowing trumpets, but I sat when we were allowed to. So 2 years ago, sat on the table at the Christmas party with the CEO after he just awarded me Manager of the Year. And it was a bit of fun. We all had these different awards that went through, and I got Manager of the Year. And he said, Stu, what does it mean to be a good manager? Like, how do you get your team to work so hard? Look at them, the respect that they have for you, and how do you do that? And the answer I gave him is the advice that I would say to that question, Nat, in that just being honest and being as straightforward and be as human as possible. Like, we're creative, and if we're trying to promote something creatively, you've got to put an ounce of passion or so and honesty into that. And that's pretty much the advice that I give back. If you're kind to people, people will be kind back to you. If you're, trying to promote or position something from a creative point of view to help others, then do it with honesty, do it with compassion and empathy, and I think you'll get the return from that.
And just lastly, Stuart, is there anyone working in the industry that you especially admire?
It's probably going to sound really, really cheesy. I mean, there's I have a lot of admiration for a lot of people, but I don't admire anybody more than my team. I know that's cheesy, but I mean it. Without them, I wouldn't be who I am, where I am, and wouldn't have achieved everything that I have achieved, especially when you kind of reflect back on these last 12 months or so. As I said, like, we've managed to maintain, the business has grown, we've rebranded, and I might be the conductor of the orchestra, if you like, but they're the guys and girls that I admire rather. They've really done it. Yeah.
Just before I let you go, I'm going to ask you a few quickfire questions, if I may, of sort of varying silliness. Start with then. I think I can probably guess the answer to this one. Are you an early bird or a lazy lion?
Early bird.
What's your worst habit?
Oh, I'm really tidy.
Is that a bad habit?
It is, when I'm forever kind of saying to the children, they're 5 and 1.5, but picking up coats. Where does this belong, Amelia? So yeah, it can be an annoyance, and the tidiness of just the house. Yeah.
A day at the beach or a hilly walk?
Hilly walk. And that's odd to say when the beach is there.
Yeah.
I was going to say that's very odd. The beach is 5 minutes down there, but yeah, hilly walk.
And I mean, I guess you've done Kilimanjaro, so some might think that a hilly walk would seem a little bit tame.
Indeed, but it's, to me, look, I think it's trees, forests. Like, to me, there's nothing better than our British countryside. I just love it. Yeah, love it.
What is your karaoke song?
Robbie Williams, Angels.
Good one. What's the last film you watched?
Peter Rabbit on movie night with our children.
Would you rather have 4 arms or really big tennis ball sized eyes that can see things 200 meters away? And why?
4 arms, because working in the environment I work, having 2 children, 2 dogs, and never really having the time to do an awful lot, those extra pair of arms would come in handy, I'm sure.
And last one, if you were marooned on a desert island, what item would you want to have with you? What one item?
Oh, that's a really tough one. I know this is really sad, but my phone. And why? If there was no signal, it doesn't really matter. It's not about keeping in touch with people. But for those that I miss, I'm really lucky. We're really lucky in this age. Everything is captured on your phone, your smart device. So I'll have all those pictures of, family, children, wife, dogs, and all the experiences. So yeah, definitely that.
Well, I guess you'd have them for about 8 hours until the battery went flat.
I've got a solar charger.
Got a portable charger. Stuart, thank you ever so much, and I hope you enjoyed this episode of Fintech Mix. If the answer to the above is yes, I would gently encourage you to click subscribe. There's plenty more where this came from. Fintech Mix is a podcast from Say Hello to Audio. To find out more, visit fintechmix.com.